Hello everyone. In this video we'll be talking about samplers. Now what is a sampler? Sampler is the request that we make from JMeter to our respective servers. So there are various kinds of requests that we can make in order to access the server or get connected with the server. So the thing which we use in JMeter is called that samplers. So there are various kinds of samplers that we can do, and each of them have their own functionality. We'll be talking about all of them one by one. Let us first understand what these different types of samplers function or what they do. So the first one is the HTTP Request sampler. This is the general form of sampler that we use for all the API calls, or for the web services, or for the web applications. We use this particular request. We can use HTTP or HTTPS. We can use the server name over here. We can use the port name, get request, the path, content encoding if it's needed, and we can set our body parameters. Parameters in the tabular form, we can use this tag. In a raw data we can use this, and if there are separate files which we want to attach as a body parameter, we can use this particular tab. And all these things comes under the basic function. The advanced function is this. As you can see, we can define our connection timeouts and the response timeouts. We can use our source address, proxies, and implementation. These all features are available in our HTTP request. So the next sampler is JSR223 Sampler. It's a normal sampler. We can write Java codes or any form of codes over here. Right now I have written a normal groovy text. We can define the type of codes that we want to use, and we can write here and it will get executed. It doesn't actually send any request to a particular server, but there are various other functionalities which we can use over here from this. Mainly it is being used to see if we have a cache overloading in our particular server, or in a particular node, or in a particular network. The third is the BeanShell Sampler. Again, it functions like the same JSR223 samplers. We can write a code and we can see over here. The third is the access log sampler. This is used to connect to a particular server and access the logs. It is not only used to access the logs of your current machine from where you are running the JMeter scripts, but also a separate server in the network. You can define the protocol, the server, the port, but make sure you have the access to that particular node from your current machine. Only then you can able to access this particular sampler. Third is the bolt request. This is used for the bolt connection. For the file transfer protocol, we can use this. We can use get, put, binary mode, save. We can use username and password. We can use server, remote file, locate file, whether we can able to access those files, whether we can able to write into that file. All can be done in FTP request via this sampler. The next is the JDBC request. It is used to access the database. Now many a times in real life application, what happens, the database stands below the or behind the microservices which can be accessed via APIs. So direct connection with the databases, many a times it doesn't happen as such in the real life scenario, but just in case if you need to access the database server and do a performance testing, you can use particularly this sampler. You can write your queries, you can do your connection timeout, everything you can do from this JDBC Request sampler. The next is the JMS Point sampler. This is again for normal connection, or if you want to like message servicing application, if you want to see from one point to another point, if you want to see the message is getting transmitted or not in a right way or in a loaded way, then at that moment JMS Point-to-Point sampler comes to the rescue. For publishers, again this one, JMS Publisher Sampler is required. For subscriber functionality, JMS Subscriber Sampler is being used. JUnit, it is again a kind of normal coded sampler which usually do not connects with any server, but we can write our code and make it function as if we are calling a request and getting a response. Same goes for Java. This particular sampler, we can make our response code, we can do anything and to see whether this is working fine or not. LDAP request for LDAP connections, LDAP extended request for LDAP extended connection. These two things mainly are not used nowadays very often because of the security issues in the LDAP connections. But again, in high entry cases, if there is a request to use LDAP testing, then we can use this particular two request. Again, that is not necessary because most of the things comes behind us a layer of APIs, which we can again use this particular HTTP request to access that. For mail application, we can use this mail reader. We have a server port, username to see whether the mail is coming. That means we are able to receive it or not, for whether we are able to disperse it or not. We can do this via this mail reader sampler. For OS applications, there are various, if you are a Linux user, you may know that there are various OS commands that we use in order to, in our day-to-day activities, or if you are using a console or terminal in the Mac OS, then various OS commands are being used for our engineering task. Many times it has been seen that to analyze the performance of a particular server from a particular command's point of view, it is required to do a performance run. In that scenario, OS process sampler comes into the rescue. SMTP is to see whether the mail, we are able to send a mail from our address to our address. Again, you can see CC, BCC, everything is there. But again, SMTP sampler is not very oftenly used nowadays. But if you are working on a mail application, this sampler can be used in that cases. For TCP connection, again, for TCP client, for TCP servers, this particular sampler is used. The second last sampler is the flow controller sampler. What happens in the case of a flow controller sampler is that it helps us to implement pacing and think time in the application. Although we can use a counter for that, but implementing a flow control action will keep the execution order in a particular fashion, in a particular streamlined way, and it will not halt the execution. So when the execution will come to this, so let us understand, I am using two HTTP requests over here. I want to create a pause, a delay of 2 seconds. I can use a flow control action in between these two, and I will write it as here 2000 milliseconds, which means 2 milliseconds. So what it is going to do is going to pause. According to the logical action on thread, it is going to pause the execution for 2 seconds, and again the second request will get executed. This is the basic functionality for flow action control, and it is mainly being used to implement pacing and think time. And the last is the debug sampler. It happens many times we have seen during correlation and parameterization. The values don't get matched easily. In that case, which values are missing, that can be seen or inspected via this debug sampler. If a debug sampler is present in your script, after the execution, when you click on that particular sampler in the listeners, you can see all the variables that are being correlated and parameterized. So this is it, all the samplers that are present in the JMeter. I hope you like the video. Thank you very much.